and welcome to episode 40 of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors, and I am your host, Alba Arango. Today, I want to talk about something super fun. Let's talk hobbies. I don't mean like my hobbies, although of course I think they're fun, and I'll probably mention a couple of them as we go through, but I'm talking about how you, as an author, can use hobbies for character development. Ooh, how cool is that? Well, let's go no further. Let's do it. Let's talk hobbies. Alrighty then. Today's episode will be in two parts, as always. In the first part, I want to talk about choosing hobbies for your characters. And in the second part, I want to talk about how to use those hobbies to further enhance and develop your characters. So let's get down to it. Part one, how do you choose a hobby or hobbies for your main character and possibly your side characters? Well, if you haven't started writing the book yet, then this is a good opportunity to actually put together your character sheet on attributes that you want your character to have. And while you're doing that, it would be a great opportunity to kind of figure out what kind of hobbies would your character have. Now, if you've already completed the book or you're more than halfway through the book, then for you, it might even be a little bit easier because you kind of already know your character. I mean, you've already gotten to know them. You've already been in their head. You've already started writing about their interactions with people. So now that you kind of have a feel for what your character is like, what kind of hobbies would they have, if any? Because not having any hobbies at all is also a great character development right there. But let's talk about it. How do you choose your character's hobbies? Well, let's think about it. You've already kind of figured it out. What are your favorite hobbies? I mean, is your character like you? And this is where you may or may not write characters that are close to people that you know. And if they are close to people that you know, if you're modeling after someone, then find out what their hobbies are, because that might be a good starting point. Now, I know one time, God, it had to be like 25 years ago, something like that. I was in my 30s. Pirates of the Caribbean had just come out, and I wrote a story, a play about what if my character got stranded on an island, and the story goes from there. But I gave her, of course, she was a teacher. Imagine that. And yes, I modeled her after me with long brown hair. I mean, she was literally me in a character. So, of course, I thought, what's my favorite hobby? And my favorite hobby was always writing. So I made her, this aspiring writer, and that's what she loved to do, was write. And it was funny because I was able to use that in my story, because at the beginning of the story, she kind of had this writer's block. She had this poster. I think it was a Star Wars poster, which of course I also have. My entire office is Star Wars. But she used that as kind of like her inspiration, but she couldn't think about how to even start the story, and she was just stuck as a writer. And then by the end of the story, the love interest gives her, a painting, and she realized when she put it on the wall that was her inspiration. Oh my gosh, so sappy, I know. And yes, that was my story, was sappy, and I love the sappy. So I used my own personal hobby as my characters because I had modeled my character after me. Now, I also love to travel. And if you love to travel, and I can't always travel as much as I would like, so I do a lot of research on traveling. And that's also a great way that your character, if they, have always wanted to travel, they've got postcards of all these different places around and they do the research on them. That's a great insight into your character too. But regardless of what hobby you decide to give them, maybe you want to give them stamp collecting. I did do stamp collecting when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, somewhere around there. Or maybe you want to give them gaming, or maybe you want to give them cosplay, or I don't know, whatever hobby you decide to give them. Now what you will need to do is a little bit of research on that. Because if your character is into that hobby, they know the lingo, they know the research, they know all of that. And if you are not into that hobby, you probably don't. And so that you don't have a lot of like really angry comments and your readers throwing you nasty emails, you want to do the research and learn the lingo. So if birding is going to be their hobby, because that's so hot right now, make sure you learn some lingo that goes with birding. All right. Now, if you figured out what hobbies your character and maybe even your best friend, the character's best friend, the love interest, if you kind of figured out their hobbies, how do you then use those hobbies to further enhance your character? Well, that's part 2. And before we get to part 2, it's time for the crazy law / writing prompt. And if you're new to the show, every week I give you a crazy law. And this is a real law that once upon a time was, or maybe possibly still is, a real law in history. And your job, if you wish to accept it, is to write a short story based on the law. And it's just a kind of a way to flex your writing muscles and give you a break from, your everyday work in progress. So here we go. This week's crazy law. In the state of Utah, not even a city, in the state of Utah, women are forbidden to wear heels more than 1.5 inches high. Now, personally, I would already be in jail. But why would they need to make that a law? This is up to you. It's your story. So there you go. Figure out a fun story about why they would want to make that a law, or, a resulting, story from it being a law. Now, let's get to part 2. How can you use your character's hobbies to enhance character development? Well, first thing you're going to have to decide is, do you want it to be like a big part of the story? Like this hobby is like consuming them or is a big part of their life. And so you want to like talk about it frequently throughout the story. Or is it a minor thing? Like they do it once in a while and they have fun. Either one is perfectly okay. If you don't want to do it at all, you don't have to. These are just suggestions. But let's talk about the big. You want it to be a big part of the story first. So like, for example, I watched a Netflix series called The Residents. And I don't know if you watched it. It came out last year. I really enjoyed it. But the main character, the detective, her hobby is birding. And it's a huge part of her life. She always carries her notebook with her. She always got the book with her. I mean, it's a big part of it. She's always on the lookout for birds. And then the writers brilliantly kind of wrote the hobby into her solving the mystery. So it's kind of cool, and it's kind of a great way to not just give your character more depth, but also to interweave it into the story is like a super cool way to not only introduce your readers to the hobby, but also to kind of use that as a way that your character can then help either solve the mystery or get their romance or whatever it is you are writing. Another example of how you can use it. Let's take Sherlock Holmes, right? Sir Arthur Conan Doyle used, Sherlock Holmes would play, I think it was the violin or the viola, but I think it was the violin. And he would do that, and it would help him think. It would help clear his mind. It would help him figure out the mystery. And that was a great tool that wasn't all the time, right? He wasn't playing the violin constantly throughout the story, but you always knew if you heard the violin or if his neighbors heard the violin that he was thinking of something. So that's kind of a cool way to kind of integrate the hobby into your story as well. Now, if you don't want it to be a huge part of the story, kind of a minor part of the story, just to like give your character like a little more depth, you could do it. Why does your character do it? Why do they do this hobby? Let's say they do adult coloring books, right? All the rage a few years ago, right? Everyone had these adult, Zen coloring books. Why? Because it's fun? Because they enjoy it? Or is it because it kind of helps relieve stress? And so why your character does it is a big part of their character development. If they're doing it just for fun because they just enjoy it, well, that's a big thing. Hey, they enjoy doing it. Let's have fun with it. But they do it to relieve stress. And this is also, by the way, a great tool for your secondary characters as well. So say, mom and dad are fighting, and every time mom and dad fight, they go their separate ways, and there's mom using the coloring book to relieve her stress. So when your character, just comes home from work and walks through the door and mom's coloring in that coloring book, nothing even needs to be said. You already, even the reader already knows what has just happened. So that's kind of a cool way to incorporate the hobby into the story. And if it's your character and they do this to relieve stress, then that's an important part of it too. Because do they have these coloring books in every room? Do they have them just in one room? What happens if, they finish the book and there's no more coloring to do? What happens to your character now? So these are all things to think about when you are writing your story. And one last thing before I end this whole thing, which I do hope you incorporate some hobbies into it. Hobbies are just fun. But hobbies are a great way to connect your characters. So that's a great way to introduce characters. Your character loves archery and she just moves to town, so she joins the archery club and there's the love interest. Or it could even be that she has a secret hobby that she doesn't tell anyone because she's so embarrassed. Maybe it is stamp collecting and she doesn't want anyone to know because she thinks everyone will just think she's one big giant nerd, so she doesn't tell anyone. And then, towards the end, you find out that the one that she's kind of, the love interest she's kind of been reluctant about, well, he's a stamp collector too. And now, boom, instant connection. And now she realizes he is the one. I mean, it's kind of sappy and maybe predictable, but it is kind of also fun. It's always fun to have these little quirky things that characters do that, maybe some of your readers can relate to. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this, please give a like, leave a comment. If you have something you would like me to talk about, by all means, shoot me an email. Go to my website, albarango.com, and go to the Connect Me and, shoot me an email of what you would like to hear me talk about. Other than that, I drop a new episode every week, every Wednesday. And until next week, stay safe and I will see you then.